the biggest hurdle that people need to focus on short term, like right now, is changing your habits, right? Change your behavior. It's not go find the best tool ever. It's not something that you have to learn how to consider yourself an AI first person and start behaving that way. Sam Altman started saying this 6 months ago, and it's becoming repeated more and more now, which is, there's at some point in the near future, there's going to be $1 billion company that has one employee. And they talked about on Y Combinator that that's going to happen with a verticalized AI software.
AI ROI Club, and it seems like we've got some good conversation. We've got Yvette that was really, engaged and sharing some really cool image.
Yeah, the videos. Yeah, that stuff is harder than it looks. Like you see it online all the time, but it's not easy.
Yeah, no, that's super sweet. Like the stuff that she generated.
Yeah, I mean, when I see those on YouTube, I tell my VA who's like building AI agent, or he's my product manager, whatever. I tell him like, go make me a video like this. I want it to be, basically tell him what I already saw. I'm like, try to recreate this. And then he goes, I don't think this is what you wanted. And he sends it to me. It's like complete garbage. It's not his fault. It's because
it's super
prompting. It's because like text prompting, is not 360 degree, like, what you need there. It's literally just words, where with video, it's like, there's so many moving parts to it. Like your prompt has to be amazing.
So I mean, that's interesting because, so a couple of things that I'm thinking about when I'm looking at stuff like what Yvette shared, right? She shared a video that was hyper realistic. It's got the dragon. It's very stylized. And then you take a look at some of the other like photos that she generated, like just call them photos or images. Like it seems like what might have happened there in terms of the video is that she created the image first and then used that image as the basis for the generation, right?
That is definitely possible. I know, this is the whole point of the group, right? Which is this stuff is moving so freaking fast. Like, when I played with this, which I haven't played with the video stuff in a couple months, I don't even think you really could do that. Like, upload, here's my image, and then a really good video could come out of it. I mean, maybe it existed, but it wasn't as common. Now, I think you're right that's becoming a more common thing that they're able to do. I know Google just released something really cool in the last day or two. I think that's part of the thing that I just posted. VO is there, which a lot of people I saw this week were saying this VO is way better than Sora, which is surprising. Yeah.
But like, like there's so much going on in this space. It's like you have to kind of pick your lane.
You have to.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about niching down before and just coming up with different ideas, but it's like, I think like if you take a look at what Yvette's done in that one particular niche, like dragons, right? Like super stylized, hyper realistic dragons, so much so that she's created these magazine images. Like that's incredible. And then she said she had a Patreon, community that she's building. People are paying her for access to some of these designs, and she's publishing like this magazine thing, issues once a quarter now. She said once a month was too much work, right? But it's just really interesting, and I'm wondering because I kind of never went into the image side, right? Like I just stayed more on the text prompting side, getting bigger documents, longer documents, code generation, integrations, APIs, right? Because that's the way I'm thinking about it is a lot more of the just automation.
Well, and also I think it sounds like what you're saying to me right now is the B2B side, the what is going to help a business where, that's probably I don't know if this is the right way to put it, but maybe the easier path. But doing things like this, what she's doing for consumer, can be absolutely massive. That has nothing to do with the B2B stuff and the data and the automations. It's like, hey, just make cool videos that people want to watch.
I think there's so many legs on that, right? Like podcasting is huge right now, right? Like there's estimates on the number of podcasts are growing like every single day, like from last year to this year. It's ginormous. Like when I say everybody and their grandmother is doing it, I mean literally. Like I have a friend who is at the church down the street, and she and her friend and their grandmother, like her grandmother, do a podcast together. Like she's asking, grandma's take on this stuff, and she's got like some funny opinions and stuff. And people are like tuning into it, but it's becoming like crazy saturated, right? Like,
oh yeah,
everybody's talking about this stuff. But with all this new video generation, what if you took the scripts, the transcripts of these things, and then you use a little bit of AI to turn it into an actual script or actual storyboard description, created some images, and then created video with that, right? Now all of a sudden you can bring like storytelling to some of these podcasts, right? Like you're creating all this content, but like, let's just say you're interviewing somebody that created a startup and they took it from like A to Z, they had ups and downs and battles and challenges. There was a dark time, you cover that. And there was times when they felt like, they were going to have to lose the house and they're going to lose everything. And then this thing happened and it turned it around. And you hear those stories, right? Like, and they're amazing. Can you imagine that being taken and being done in a dramatic, like superhero style comic book, like layout? Like, how cool would that be, right?
Yep.
And then even animate that. But even just like the image of turning that into like a comic book, I think has legs on it. Think about like all the documentary podcasts there are, like how stuff.
The history one.
History, like there's so much content on that, and it's not like you're gonna take the transcript and just rip them off, right? Completely. You take that as a framework. It's historical facts and details. You're paraphrasing, manipulating, changing it around, and then using that to build like a storyboard. I mean, that's a business right there.
Of course, it's freaking.
You guys go out there and just do that.
I mean, it's this opens up doors that just have never existed until the last 12 months. Like it would be like telling somebody in the 80s, like, oh, you could in your room could build a business where people will buy your stuff, but they're on the other side of the world, and then you could write articles for them, and then you money via ads. Like somebody would think like this doesn't even make sense because they had no frame of reference. Well, this is the same as what we're going through right now, except it just started.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
I mean, and that's why, like, I love talking to you about this stuff because you're working on so many different use cases. You guys are building tools, and then like in the community side, like we're seeing other people's use cases. We're seeing what other people are doing in the space, how they're building a business around what they're doing, and here's the thing, like to get to some of that level, it's like you don't get there overnight, right? Like you're building this, you're testing and trying, and then you're learning and you're getting better and better at it. Like I have no idea. This could be 500 word prompt or 1,000 word prompt to get those particular details, right? It could be. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not an image generation expert on that front, but all I'm saying is that you can really niche down and be really specialized on the image generation side.
Yep.
And then when you get really good at that, like that becomes a transferable skill set, I think, on the video generation side. Because if you think about what video actually is, it's just a bunch of images.
It's moving images, yeah.
Moving images, right? Like, so yeah, like when I think about storyboarding, like that's all you're doing, right? You're just generating scenes and cuts and whatnot in between. So.
Yeah, I mean the opportunity here is incredible. I mean, think of how much this is going to disrupt Hollywood. I mean, how much money they're spending on this stuff. I mean, obviously they're already doing it for sure. But for some people, if you want to get into that space or be a consultant for them or be a contractor for helping them, I mean, yeah, there's going to be so much. I mean, they just announced here in Austin they're going to have the first ever AI film festival in March. I think around the time South by Southwest here in Austin. Yeah. And so
Hey, I don't want to come out and check that
yeah.
out.
Yeah. I mean, it just seems so cool. But if you've seen some of these, like what I just posted, you see these little like 3-second clips of that look really good, but it's like, okay, who wants to watch that? Well, kind of coming back to that Lord of the Rings one that I posted, you can turn those little 10-second, 20-second ones, and you can make a legit short film out of them.
Exactly.
You got to edit them all together. I mean, it's work now. It's not crazy easy, but it's doable. And there are these real artists that are doing stuff like this. I mean, even 12 months ago, there was a rap video of like Star Wars characters like rapping. I should find it. I'll post it. But it was really good, really good. And it was 12 months ago. Yeah.
This reminds me of like, I think probably when you and I were early 20s, and internet, was E-Bombs World. Remember, like, people creating like these really crappy videos, but they were hilarious.
Yep.
And it was like the first kind of introduction to user-generated content, Daily Motion, some of those other places. YouTube was not even really out there yet. Like, I'm not even sure like when YouTube really got on my radar, but that was like way back when. And I think it was so cool how people were able to capture content, put it up there. And then when you talk about like making film, right? It used to be, hey, you need like Hollywood production, videography equipment. Then you got like these DSLRs that people. It's still pretty expensive. And then now you have high quality cameras on like an iPhone or Samsung or Pixels, like that have really good quality cameras. And so it made video so accessible for everybody. And so you got kids that want to go into videography that are in high school or college, and they're able to do this stuff already with like CapCut,
yeah.
CapCut. Like you can already do all that editing stuff. You can do that with all these tools like on Instagram or TikTok and create your own reels. But with the AI side now, it's just like that camera, the iPhone camera experience all over again. Like now everybody, even if you don't know how to shoot a video, if you can describe what you want to see, you can start to build it. And if you want to put in the work, it still is work, right? Of laying out the storyline, generating the storyboards, figure out where you're going to have your cuts and angles, creating those images, creating those little clips, and then compiling it together, which I think, to your point, will get easier over time.
It will.
Like I'm sure by this time next week, somebody will have already generated software that does incremental API calls for stills.
Yeah.
And just pieces together.
Oh, I bet you that probably does already exist. It's just that's part of the problem right now is finding these things. There's so many, and a normal person cannot find all this stuff. Like, and they can all be great. I mean, a way to think about AI software right now is it's like there's tens of thousands of these tools. That doesn't mean they're all bad except for ChatGPT and Claude and a couple others. Like a lot of these things are absolutely amazing. And also what you just said, which is important too, is they are taking some of these pre-existing tools and merging them together and incorporating API calls and things like this, where they can make an app that maybe the foundational layer of it is still the same thing. It's still Sora, it's still ChatGPT, but then they're making it into a workflow or into a process that makes the value prop to a user so much higher. And this is what I think we're talking about what people should be thinking they should be building, right? Which is something that you don't need to build a foundational LLM model, right? Like this is what people were saying, by the way. I'm going to post about this in the group this afternoon. This is what they were saying last year was if you're not building an LLM, if you're not fine tuning models, you're worthless, right? Because you're just going to get wiped away. And Y Combinator just released a podcast this week that basically said that was all wrong, 100% wrong. The value in what they call, a lot of people call them rappers, like with a W, that was meant to be a degrading term, and it's not. Like, it's not at all. The opportunity for a better way to think of, instead of calling it like a rapper product, is verticalized AI, right? Which is find your vertical and then solve that problem by using multiple different, foundational models or plans or agents to put things together. And those are going to be multi-billion-dollar companies. And another thing that I think it was Sam Altman started saying this 6 months ago, and it's becoming repeated more and more now, which is, there's at some point in the near future, there's going to be $1 billion company that has one employee. And they talked about on Y Combinator that's going to happen with a verticalized AI software, which is somebody finding a big enough problem, being able to solve it with AI agents and solve this complex problem for a lot of people that's very valuable, and use AI to do it. And then boom, people will pay $1,000, $2,000, $10,000 for it. And you get enough people paying for that, and boom, all of a sudden you have $1 billion valuation, and it's just something that somebody did.
I mean, to that point, right? Like, I think there's two parts that I'm thinking about when you're talking about that. The first is like I could do this right now, right? Like, I can just go to Zeal, I can get ChatGPT, I can get Claude, and just say, hey, what are all of the critical functions for building a business, and create an AI agent prompt or role or whatever for each one of those critical roles, right? Like, I could do that, and then you'd have to tune that stuff and build that, but you can build your whole team of agents to handle those things. Of course, now you got to start wiring them to actually do the things for each one, right? Because you're going to need somebody who does copyright. You're going to need some marketing support. You're going to need some financial things. You're going to need legal review potentially, right? But then you're just the other part is just like software development or agent development, whatever, like that coding side of things. And once when you have all of those things, you essentially have business in the box, right? It's just an agentic business, which I know I've talked about that before too. But to your point, it's like services and software, like there is no upper bounds of what you can charge, right? Like price is very, very elastic on the upper bound side. And I think I've heard it said like this: if you want to build a big business, charge a lot of money. If you want to build a medium business, charge a medium amount of money. If you want to build a small business, charge a little bit of money, right? There's literally no upper bounds. And so if you find things that are super valuable for corporations, like, you have to think big. You have to think much outside of the normal day-to-day consumer experience. That if you solve a big, big problem in that space, it doesn't even have to be like a complicated problem. It could just be a very repetitive, time-consuming problem that everybody has to solve for. Like, think about accounting, bookkeeping, or payroll, or one particular nuance in the tax code. I don't know. Right? You could just carve out one little niche like that, but because of the implication it has on corporations across the board, it can become wise stream. And if it's agentic and it's got the ability to almost autonomously integrate with other systems, right, like plug and play, then you're basically adding an employee to every single corporation that handles that entire function for them. So what's that worth? $50K a year per company? How many companies do we have in the US?
Yeah. Well, another way to think about this too, it's kind of what you're saying, but I've been hearing a lot about this in the last couple months with AI, which is changing up pricing models and how you charge for things as a business. For in this type of world we're talking about, SaaS, it's been generally, hey, it's this recurring, monthly, it's $100 a month, $1,000 a month, whatever it is, just a typical monthly fee. Yeah. Then there's been this push toward, people are not liking monthly costs like that, so maybe just do the one-time fee. Obviously this is more on smaller scale software, sure. But hey, it's $300 one time. But the other model that is just now starting to pick up, and it makes perfect sense in the AI space, is charging via value of the outcome that they're getting, right? Yeah. So now I'm not an expert at this on how you actually track these things, whatever, but just as a concept, what you were saying is, hey, I built this agent that, let's just make the whole example easy, even though there could be complicated versions, but say I built this agent that literally replaces this $80,000 employee. So without that person, this agent does everything they do. You can get rid of that person. You just saved $80,000. So therefore, I'm going to charge you $20,000 because that's still only, you're paying 25% what you're paying before, and you're getting the same thing or better because it works 25 hours a day, whatever. And that's the pricing model that that a lot of these people, companies are going to. And this is bigger companies that are starting to do this. I don't know if I heard, I can't remember who it was, but there's a company everybody knows is like starting to do this with AI agents.
I mean, I think you should. I think Salesforce and Agentforce has, been looking at some of that stuff. I mean, Mark Burnoff, just completely focusing in on Agentforce being like his #1 priority. I think it's super smart. I think, Amazon and AWS is like the sleeping giant that they're working on stuff, you're just not hearing a whole lot, and I think they do a good job of just building and showing, not necessarily telling a whole lot. Like when they show up, and you know that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think even a year ago, not Bezos, who took over from Andy.
Andy Jassy.
Yeah, Andy Jassy. They were talking about how they were going to have 8 foundational models, right? Like there was only going to be a handful of foundational models that was going to be the basis of their AI layer, and everything was going to be built on top of those foundational models. So like a coding agent, or model that was specifically trained for that. They talked about like a general conversational one. They talked about image generation. They talked about spatial awareness. They talked about potentially, video, I think, and there was a couple of other ones, that they kind of had blocks for. Maybe it wasn't well defined, and I don't think that's too far off from what we're seeing today, right? Like there's just a handful of foundational models, and you're just going to build stuff on top of that. And it's just going to continue to build, right? It's going to become more and more niche. And part of that is like, I think anybody and everybody can build that because the world is wanting something hyper personalized now. Like the consumers want things that are hyper personalized. So you can go and build like a lifestyle AI agent business by catering to something very, very specific. Just get in there, deliver the value, and by the time you've built it, and there might be other solutions that come along, if your solution personalizes itself to the user, which you can with the custom knowledges in the RAG, and it learns with memory about the user, I think it becomes extremely sticky, right, for the end user. And you're not going to necessarily have to compete against other solutions unless they're, 5x, 10x, 20x better experience than what you're offering today.
Yeah, I actually think that makes a lot of sense. And this comes back to kind of a talk I had with somebody who worked at OpenAI yesterday, that the niching down is really where I think you just said it, which is where a lot of this is going, because a lot of these the big companies, the ChatGPTs, they are building things that are big and broad, right? Almost what you said about build the big thing, not like for the small thing, right? So it doesn't make sense for OpenAI to build a tool for HVAC companies. It doesn't make sense. That's too small, right? They are going to build these giant tools that solve these giant problems that maybe an HVAC company could use if they were smart enough to go figure out how to build their own agents and how to build, whatever. So the value is knowing that, hey, can I find my small niche? Now, HVAC is not that small, but like something like that, where I can take the tools that OpenAI is building and then hyper personalize them for a very specific industry, and then be the AI app for that industry, because that is where you're right. It will be very sticky, because the fact that OpenAI or someone else has this broad, Salesforce has a tool that's really cool. If I'm an HVAC company am I going to go to the HVAC AI company, or am I going to go see if Salesforce can build me a cool HVAC version of their AI platform? Like, that's not, most owners are not going to do that, right? And so this again comes back to what the opportunity is right now is find the niche, which again, I think the ideal one, the one you're already in, right? Like, what industry are you in right now?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And like going back to what you're talking about with like value-based pricing, like that has been a thing for a long time in the consulting world.
Yeah, exactly. In consulting, but not software, right?
Yeah, and I think that's been the challenge between traditional software companies, software developers, because a lot of folks from that space, if you're not familiar with the business side of business, right, and you're just focused on the technical solution implementation side, like the way you look at cost and revenue is two different things, right? Like when you look at the value. And so what I see a lot of folks do is if they're building software, they're like, oh, this is how much it costs for me to build this stuff. This is how much it costs to maintain. This is the infrastructure cost. I'm going to take my cost and add some margin. And, you know, the infrastructure costs at max utilization for a user might be like $5. And they're like, I should charge 3 times my cost. And so they'll charge somebody like $15. And they're producing like hundreds of thousands of dollars of value, but it's just like they're just missing the boat on that. Now, I'm not saying you have to be exploitive and try to extract every penny. In fact, I advise against that because like AI gives us an order of magnitude of enhancement, right, to the solutions that we can offer compared to traditional software.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, if the value proposition model of SaaS, right, software, is 3x, 5x, 10x, like ROI on your spend, I think AI solutions should actually look for 20x, 30x, maybe even 50 or 100x ROI, depending on who you're serving, right? Because the value you can generate using AI and the speed that you can get there is so much faster that I think how you stand out and become really, really competitive in the landscape is to actually look at value creation through the lens of more like maybe a 10, 20x, is right now. I think longer term it's going to shift to 50, 100x. Because, like you're saying with an employee replacement costs, yeah, like if you're doing consulting, I'm going to be looking at 10 to 20, or I'm going to be looking at 5 to 10x, right? 8x, somewhere in that space. So if I can save a company $80,000 a year, I can look at that 1 year and say, okay, my consulting is worth $8,000. I can look at that as over the next 3 years or next 5 years, 10 years, you're saving $80,000 a year. And so maybe my consulting is worth, $25,000 because it's saving you that money over time. But with software, to save $80,000 from an employee, you might be charging 8,000 or 5,000, right? Because people perceive that differently. Mm-hmm. But with AI agents, like it's a lot higher value. So you could charge, $20,000 to $25,000 for that. My argument is, hey, you should actually go back to like the 10x. You should be charging 8,000 because you can just expand and scale so much faster, right? When you're actually delivering a no-brainer value proposition, like you just have the opportunity to go out there so much faster. You still have to do, the testimonies. You still have to get the data. Mm-hmm. You still have to do the storytelling. But like, yes, you can be at that 25K, on the value extraction side. But like, I think you have to measure like what value you're creating. And so where I would justify the 25,000 on that is I'm not just replacing an $80,000 worker. I'm actually giving you 3 $80,000 workers at a quarter of the price of what you're paying today. Mm-hmm. See, and that's how I would justify it, because if you have an 8-hour shift, but I have an AI agent that never sleeps, you're getting 3 times the utilization. That's like having 3 employees working for you because it never sleeps. So that's how I'm thinking about value creation for businesses, right? And that's how I can justify a 25K cost, right? So
totally. Yeah. No, that's really good stuff. And again, when we say, all this has happened in the last 12 months, or maybe, ChatGPT came out, 24 months ago. I think this AI agent kind of, when you call an AI agent almost like an employee type, this is like real right now.
Yeah.
Like this has not even been out 24 months or 12 barely. Like really, this is a 3 to 6 months ago that it really just started happening to where it could be somewhat viable. And again, some of these big companies are already doing this. Of course, Klarna was the big one that made the news, where they said they fired a bunch of people. I think their CEO said last week they're just never hiring again. Like literally, they're keeping all their people. They're giving them pay raises, but like when people leave, they're replacing them with AI. And so again, I think I just can't stress enough. And one of these days, we're going to get JD on here to give his take from a developer's perspective. But when I talk to him, he just looks at me like, TJ, I don't know what the hell's going on right now, because it's so wild what these guys are doing, developing this stuff that's not public yet, that already works. Right now, they're just trying to figure out use cases, building the businesses, building the strategies. It's absolutely insane. And, I understand people's hesitation to really like taking this super seriously, because if you do, you have to adjust, right? You have to truly start making changes, digging in, thinking it through. But man, I don't think people are ready for how fast this is going to come. And again, when you think of the employee side, you constantly hear about, oh, you got to have people, you got to support your people. This is bad for the country. This is, all these things, these reasons. But when it comes down to it, it's going to be an individual choice from a company to say, do we want to pay someone $70,000 a year to do something, or do we want to pay $10,000 or $20,000 to have AI do it? No rational company or business owner is going to say, let me pay 3x. They're just not going to do it. And so people do this thing where they look at it from as if it's like an entity making decisions for everybody. That, oh, this is the right thing to do to keep people. No. That's not how decisions are made. Decisions are made on a small scale basis. And for that small scale, people are not going to take something that's 3x worse and more expensive to be nice. It's not going to happen.
No, I 100% agree. And I think it actually is, I think where you're going to see it the most is going to be large corporations first, because they're accountable to Wall Street, right? Like their quarter's earnings, like they're going to do it from a purely optimization perspective. But I think you're going to see it also on the small business side. I'm not talking about necessarily traditional mom and pops that are like retail, but I'm saying new small business service providers are going to go this way first, right? Because it's going to allow them to get there faster. They're not going to have as much overhead, and I think you're seeing it a lot already. And that's the part that I think the middle is going to miss out on. Those medium-sized businesses, traditional mom and pops. The question won't be, do I want to save the money or not? It's going to be, what is the person down the street doing? Because if they choose to adopt that and you don't, their costs are lower, which means their prices can be lower, which means how are you going to compete against them?
Exactly.
So I think market demands and competition is going to drive that, right? And it might not be a direct, their prices come down. It might be that they can service 3 times as many clients, right, at the same rate.
It could be. I mean, again, there's so many second order effects. I hadn't even thought of this one, but here's another one, kind of like what Klarna's doing, which is, okay, we didn't fire people because of this. We didn't, or maybe they fire people, but they have less employees. They start paying better, right? So now they're going to get all the talent. So maybe their prices don't lower. Now they're going to have all the talent. So you're going to lose all your employees, because they're like, yeah, we could pay 30% more money because all of our costs outside of people has gone down significantly, right? So there's just going to be a lot of different ways. But I think you're totally right. It's going to be a wake-up call when somebody goes, how is my competitor doing so many things that we can't do and crushing it? And that's how they're going to find out that they better jump on this.
Yeah. Right. And I think that's a critical piece, is like, if you don't do it, somebody else will.
Yep.
and it's quickly becoming winner take all. Like if you thought software was winner take all in the last 2 decades, 3 decades, like this is definitely winner take all in terms of like if you're coming to the market with a niche mass market product, like if you're first mover, you've got a superior solution and you're personalizing, meaning like you're getting data from customers and personalizing the product to your customer, like you're entrenched. 3 to 6 months in, right? 3 months to develop a new habit, behavior type of thing. Some say 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. But by 3 months in, people get, really used to your product. It becomes stuck, and good luck trying to disenfranchise anybody that's already entrenched in there if they know what they're doing. And even if you don't know what you're doing, you can use AI to figure it out now.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say that. Use AI to help you figure out how to use AI. Like you can, it works. It's crazy, but it works. I mean, it's really not when you dig in, but it's just funny to hear this idea of, I'm struggling with how to use AI for something. We'll ask it. Ask AI how to how to not be
stuck. You can literally give it that statement. I'm struggling how to use AI. Help me figure this out.
Yeah. I saw somebody post today about this, which is probably very true for our audience and for a lot of non-technical, non-super deep in the space. That the biggest hurdle that people need to focus on short term, like right now, is changing your habits, right? Change your behavior. It's not go find the best tool ever. It's not something that you have to learn how to consider yourself an AI first person and start behaving that way. So that means don't go to Google first. It means go to Perplexity or ChatGPT. It means when you have a problem, the first thing you do is you ask AI. You don't ask your employees. You don't sit there and brainstorm it by yourself. Don't call a friend. Go to AI first, right? Start getting in that habit, because that is what's going to teach you what it's capable of, which then opens more doors for the future on the more things you can do, right? It's like going down a rabbit hole, right? You got to just keep going down, and you'll learn more and more and see more and more what's possible. And it doesn't mean that friends and employees and stuff aren't worth anything. It means you go to the AI first and then take it to your employees or your friends of, hey, now I have a fully fleshed out idea, all written up in a report. Now let's figure out what to do with it. Instead of just, hey, can I ask you can we do brainstorming, and I haven't really thought this through yet, right? Now you've taken that first step to get real quality value first before you do something with it. And I think that's the mindset people need to have.
Yeah. I mean, nowadays everything is done on your phone, right? We've got that mobile accessibility, and like to your point, my 4 go-tos is Perplexity. If I'm going to run a search on anything, like I go there first because I'm just going to get the answer that I'm looking for, and I can always use that as a researching tool because it's got the sources. So like I'll look up something specific, and then I want to find the source, and then I'll click on the sources to find it, right? And they've done this for monetization purposes, but they're starting to have shopping links, right? And sponsored links in Perplexity. Super interesting. And I'm actually happy about that. Like I think it's a really cool, growth of that feature, as long as it's not spammy.
Yeah, exactly.
2 though is like I use ChatGPT when I want to have more of like a conversational thing. The voice is really nice. Or if I'm trying to like brainstorm and just kind of really develop an idea more. Claude is great for prototyping, right? Like if you want to stand up like a quick app or like some sort of tool or utility, like you can just tell it, hey, I need a calculator for amortization, but I also need to include, early payoff and this and that, and help me understand like what's the valuation going to be if I pay it off at each particular point, right? Or how much I'm going to save in interest payments. And he'll just build it, right? You might have to iterate a couple times, but he'll just build it, and you can see a proof of concept. And then if you really want to take it a little bit further and develop like an app or like a website, like Replit Agents is so amazing. Like I don't pretend to be a software developer. I do have, data science background, done some coding, but I'm, inch deep on the development side for web apps or whatever. You can go in there and just ask it, like, build this, build that, And as long as you kind of like keep track of what you're asking for and the different changes and only do one thing at a time, it does a really, really good job of building. So sometimes it gets stuck, but you got to be a little bit creative. Sometimes you got to use other tools on the desktop. But for my phone, just asking for it to develop like the tool and then add this stuff and add that stuff and then be able to deploy it from my phone, that's super amazing.
That's
Yeah.
And I haven't even really dug into this Replit stuff. I know he was on some advice for people too. Is the founder of Replit was on the My First Million podcast a week or two ago, and I had a bunch of people reach out to me like, "Is this true? I could build agents. I could, it's like I haven't even played with Replit yet, but I know it's pretty powerful from what you're saying. I don't think you can build you can't like as a non-technical person go say build me an app that does blankety blank, and then all of a sudden it's on the internet working, taking payments. No, you still need development. But it can get you along a lot of the way there, which is just so impressive as an entrepreneur to say, hey, I can build the first 30, 40, 50% of this app all by myself, non-technical, non-designer, and I can have it done, ready, so that I could show a developer or a designer your prototype, and then all they have to do is make it better or implement it instead of, hey, here's my idea. Go build this from scratch, which is like a much bigger lift. It's scarier. It's all that stuff. So, yeah, things like Replit, Cursor, V0 is also a really cool one. Again, I sometimes get confused between the differences between these, but even V0, I played with it as a non-technical person. It's easy. You can use it.
It's interesting too, Mm-hmm. But to your point, like I think those models can be a little bit shallow in terms of like what they build. Right? And they can also get stuck on the planning. And so my one advice, having used Replit agents for probably about 3 weeks now in just building a bunch of random stuff and just seeing what it does, I would actually not use Replit agent as a jump off point or like the starting point for building this. I would actually hop into ChatGPT, Claude, and I would either build a custom agent. Maybe there's something we can build in Zeal at some point. And I basically tell it like, you're a senior software developer. You're helping me design my app. You're helping me plan everything from a component level, step by step. You're helping me figure out what order I should build everything, how to get the features. You're asking me questions. And then you just go through this huge dialogue with ChatGPT, use the Canvas feature, and have it write out, your development plan as you guys are talking through it. And then what you do is like you just get a notebook or notepad, and you take that plan, and you just take like the first line of it and put it in Replit. Mm-hmm. And then you test it, make sure it works. And if it works, then you add the next line and the next line. Like, if you already have a plan that's generated outside and you do that step by step, it can actually work really, really well. And there are bugs that you'll run into as a not super savvy technical person on that front, like for debugging errors. It's like sometimes it can solve it, but sometimes you just copy and paste it into Perplexity or ChatGPT and then let it give you an answer. And then you feed that answer back into the agent, right? The Replit agent. And it can build a really, really cool tool. And in fact, like that's something I'm working on right now. Is like, I think hopefully by mid-January, I will have this app that I've been wanting to develop that's mobile friendly, that is designed just so that people can do prompts and chain them together, right? And I think I talked to you about this prompt chaining app and just how simple it could be, but just being on mobile, right? So that anybody could build essentially a single form prompt chaining or agent workflow, essentially, and it do its thing, and then it give you like a result. Like, there's so many different use cases, I can't think of all of them, but like I think it'd be really cool to build that and release that out there and let people use it. Yeah. And maybe at the start they're just using their own keys. That might require people to be a little bit more savvy. But if you don't have a team and you want to pay for it, like I'll toss Stripe in there and add that in there, and people can pay for it too, or buy credits or whatever. So
Yep. Yeah.
It's really
Well, that's the point of what we're doing with the group, right? Which is walking people through this stuff. I think that's such a big problem with some of this stuff, that it's not crazy technical, but using some of these tools, getting your API keys, how do I find this? How do I connect this? Like, we can walk people through that, right? To kind of streamline a lot of this stuff and get people to be more AI savvy, which then puts you in the top 5% or more of people in your industry, or probably higher than that. And now you're the rock star AI person in your community.
And I think that's the other part, like that you're talking about. Is like we should, like, anybody who's in this group, you should just start talking about what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you should be documenting and sharing anything that you're learning with your group, your community, your industry, because I don't think it takes a whole lot to stand out and become like a thought leader on the AI side. If you're doing a little bit every single day, like you're talking about, turn into a habit, document what you tried, your failures, your mistakes, what you learned, how you grew, and just share all those things, because there's somebody who's never even done any of that stuff and they don't even know where to start, and you're 2 steps ahead of them, but that's all it takes.
Yeah.
Like,
again, so that's exactly what it is. Like, yes, there are a million more people smarter than you about AI who are, building actual LLMs. They work in San Francisco. They're doing all this crazy tech stuff. Those people cannot speak your language to whatever industry you're in, right? So if you're in HVAC, or you're in insurance, or you're in, you have a cleaning company, you can be the best AI person in that industry. So it doesn't matter that there's a million more, because they know nothing about what you know. So you take knowledge that you have and bring it and be the leader in your space. That's where the gold is, right?
Yeah, and I know we're at the end of our time today, but next time I do want to cover, and maybe I'll share this just in the group as a model, but we go from what I'll say is unassisted human beings to augmented AI augmentation, right? And then, like, almost on the far end, you have AI agents that really remove humans from the loop. And anybody who's a coach or consultant, like, AI augmentation is great for you, but it's great for your clients too, especially if you have a platform that you can just use over and over and over again. Like, I mean, I know we talked about it before, but like what you guys are building is like perfect for that, because so much of the marketplace is not going to latch onto AI agents. Like, they're going to buy somebody else's solution that has AI agents built into it and put it in their business, but they're not going to build it into their business, right? Like, they're not going to develop themselves.
Yeah.
But AI augmentation is going to come first, right? Especially in that middle and small business space. It's going to be somebody using ChatGPT to draft a social media post or develop their content calendar for the next 30 days, right? Like, it's going to be that type of thinking, and I'm going to use air quotes, intelligence type tasks or knowledge tasks that we want to replace or make easier. And it's just going to take the cognitive load off of people that don't otherwise have that skill set to be able to do it. And that's where there's a tremendous upside. Like you're saying, like, I don't want to lay off my 3 people team over here that does this in my law firm, right? But the reality is we're not processing as many contracts as, it doesn't take us all that much time. So what can we do with that time? Well, you could spend, $10,000 a person and have them go learn at some university or whatever, a class or certification, or you can just get them a subscription to, AI product and have it like come up with a strategy of things that they can use that product for. And then once when you created this custom prompts or whatever, like, all they got to do is tell them the tasks that they want to do. Like, I don't have to be a social media expert to write 50 LinkedIn posts anymore, right? Like,
yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, man, it's wild times right now. It's the Wild West for what's possible, and hopefully people here ready to take advantage of that because it won't last forever. AI will always be around. You'll always be able to make money from it, especially as a consultant. But as an entrepreneur or as a consultant, like with way, way less competition, now's the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, all right. Thanks for this, Alex. We'll talk to you in the next one.